Okay, good evening and thank you. It is Thursday, November 21st at 6:08 p.m. This is Bennington's Community Policing Advisory Review Board. We are located on the third floor in the multipurpose room at 130 River Street in the Firehouse in Bennington. My name is Kelly Carroll. I have the pleasure of chairing the board. Welcome, and I would like to introduce the other board members. So if we can.
Lindsay Brilliant.
Kate Cost.
Scott Frost.
Vicki Lamprin.
Jean Connor, liaison from the Select Board.
And we also have Lee from Cat TV here filming, so thank you. First, I'd like to ask Lindsay to read the town vision statement.
Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, and resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life.
Next, we have the consent agenda, which includes the October 17th meeting minutes. So for the purpose of discussion, can I get a motion?
I motion to accept.
To discuss.
Discuss.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? They were distributed for previously, so for any changes, or can we accept them? Can I get a motion to accept as is?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Abstentions? So be it. Public comment, we did not have anyone sign up. Is there anyone here that would like to speak that did not sign up? Okay. All right, so next we will go to the first item on our agenda, which is the Bennington Police Department update. And we have Chief Doucette with us today. And on the agenda is a complaint review. So, Chief, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I apologize that you're standing outside when we arrived here. It's 40 degrees and rainy. And I'm deeply sorry that that happened. With technology, I'm not sure why that happened, but when you go back to the old way of a fob and a swipe, we all made it in here. So I appreciate your patience in waiting for the lieutenant and I to arrive here this evening. So we have a few things to talk about this evening, but first I'd like to talk about the internal affairs complaint number 4, our fourth internal affairs investigation for 2024. This complaint involved an individual that was transported to the Bennington Police Department for an alleged crime that had been committed, and the person was placed in a holding area, and while waiting for the court to make a determination on release conditions, another emergency call, pressing matter came in, and unfortunately the person was left in the holding area for a period of time, and the person sat there for over an hour and ended up soiling themselves. At the time, there was a shift change going on. A couple of officers that were coming on duty had walked by the processing room. The person asked for their assistance. The officers did stop and speak, but were not prepared in plain clothes, shorts, one of them, to take care of this, and said that they would be back as soon as they changed. Did not have a cuff key or what have you. So with that being said, the person was eventually removed within a very short period of time from the processing holding area, and was spoken to, was apologized to that they sat there for a lengthy period of time due to this other pressing situation, and the person took to Facebook, made some complaints against the police, and then anonymously, we received a complaint through Facebook. But what's important for you to know is prior to that, the officer immediately reported the incident to their supervisor, made their supervisor aware that this had happened, and there was an apology, an offer to give the person a ride home and to get the person some different clothes. And with that being said, I learned of the incident. I spoke to Lieutenant Grandy. We had planned on looking at the matter. And interestingly enough, as we were discussing the matter in my office, we both received an anonymous complaint through the website. So we were on top of this matter. The matter was looked into, was investigated by an officer that is trained in internal affairs investigations. And we found during the investigation that the person was placed in the holding area and that the person was being viewed through our communication center. We have cameras throughout. And it was determined that the officers had not done anything wrong. During the investigation, the person was more concerned about the officers that had walked by the room and that they didn't do anything to help, but they didn't have any tools or equipment. It was all in the locker room. As soon as they changed and went back out, the other officers had already returned to the office and were taking care of the situation. So with that being said, the internal affairs investigation was completed by a supervisor and was turned over to me. The officers that were involved were exonerated from any wrongdoing. They did not violate a policy or a procedure. But what we did find in this particular matter is that the camera in that holding room, although functioning properly for when it was installed and what it's supposed to do, did not have audio. So with that being said, one of my recommendations was that the antiquated camera that's in that room be replaced. Our IT director responded over, looked at the camera, and was able to replace that within 7 days of the complaint. So now we have a brand new camera head in there that does record audio and video. So that was really what came out of this complaint, was that, again, there was no policy violations here. But again, we looked at ourselves and we looked at the equipment in that room and we replaced that camera. The communication staff can now hear people talking. All you have to do is look at the camera. It will activate, and the communication staff will hear that. So with that being said, that is the complaint. I'm happy to answer any questions about this if necessary. But again, for the third time, there was no policy violation. It was an unfortunate incident that happened. No one was injured as a result of that, and we did note the deficiency with the camera, and that has been replaced.
Okay, so thank you. I think it's good that there was a process improvement, but I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So the incident occurred in a temporary holding cell?
In a temporary holding area, not
Holding
cell.
area, okay.
Correct.
As opposed to a regular holding cell?
Yeah, there's a holding area, and then there are 3 cell blocks.
Okay. What's the difference between the holding area and the holding cell? Are there facilities within the cells?
There are facilities within there are toilets, straight up, not facilities. There are toilets and sinks in 2 of the holding cells, and the holding area is meant for a temporary hold where a person either wears a wrist restraint or an ankle restraint on around their ankle while the officer is getting all of the paperwork together, which is what was happening when this happened. Again, getting the information from a judge to be able to release the person on release conditions, but then that other call came in and it required all hands on deck. So.
Okay, and when someone does come in and they're getting arrested and they go into the temporary area, are you letting them know that if they do need to use the facilities or the toilet to activate the voice part of the camera?
Yeah, so
do you tell them that?
we don't tell them that I mean, normally when they're in that holding area, in that room, the officers are walking back and forth because the holding room is here, the area where they are processed is off to the left, and the officers are going back and forth to use the copy machine or to go to the form rack to get forms. The door is open, the door is not closed. It's a wide open 36-inch space where we communicate. There are times we have 4 or 5 people sitting in that room, and we communicate with them on a regular basis. So there is the ability to communicate.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Kate?
I just want to clarify something. My understanding is that this individual that was in the temporary holding area did not indicate at all that they needed to use the facilities. They didn't wave their hands or anything like that, or yell or anything
Yes,
like that.
that's correct. The person, the supervisor that did the internal affairs investigation also provided me with the video, and the person made no effort to use their hands or to signal.
Yeah.
But it still, again, it still raised concern to me that camera did not have audio, and that's why we ended up doing that. I mean, not that this incident was good, but it was good in the sense that it brought to light that we had a deficiency in our IT. So so we did correct that. But yes, you are correct, and that's in the report, that there was no signaling of any type.
Exactly. Which, of course, because if there was no audio, at least you would have had some indication, but
Right.
didn't. The other thing that I just wanted to clarify is that the officers that walked by this individual that were in shorts or just street clothes, they weren't on duty yet, were they?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because they weren't on duty, they had no authority to really do anything for this individual until they weren't on duty.
I mean, you have to pass by that room when you come on duty, right? Or when you report to work to get prepared for work.
Right.
But they had no protective clothing. They don't, I mean, I don't carry a handcuff key off duty, and I'm sure others don't either. But that's what would have been required, was to undo that restraint. Yeah, they were both off duty, and as soon as they changed and had their equipment and their uniforms, they came right back out, and she was already being tended to by the officer that put her in there. So,
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It seems to me that some of this was a function of just being understaffed. Is that true?
No, I mean, I don't want to. No. I think that what happened here was an exigent circumstance happened, and requiring all hands on deck, and it required everyone to respond, and they were there for a lot longer trying to defuse the situation. So, and I don't want to go down the wrong path on this, but now we respond to calls and we try to diffuse them. We don't just automatically place people in wrist restraints and go hands-on with them. We try to talk them down from the situation that they're involved in. So it took a lot longer than the officers anticipated. But as soon as they cleared from that call, they went right down to check on this individual, and unfortunately, the situation, they were too late, and but they did take it upon themselves to offer other means to make that person more comfortable, and all of that was refused. So, yeah, I mean, we're not perfect for sure, but I don't want to blame this on a staffing issue. I blame it on the fact that it required an emergency response, and again, for the third time, it was all hands on deck, and that's what happened.
And you did the best you could.
We did.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
When you take someone in, like this person, was this person told when they were brought to the police station that they were being arrested? How does that work?
Well, I mean, they're in Well, it depends. We take people back to the office in wrist restraints. If we've deprived them of their freedom, then they're under arrest.
Right.
And if we hold them at the office, they're in our custody and they're under arrest. Sometimes people will come out and say, well, geez, I didn't know I was being arrested. Well, when you're wearing wrist restraints and you're in the office and you're told that we're calling the judge for release conditions or we're waiting for the state's attorney's office to give us guidance on whether or not they want bail set, you are. I mean, if your freedom is deprived and you're in our facility, you are under arrest. You're in our care and custody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
2 more quick questions.
All right.
Reading through this report, you may not have the answer to this. How late into the evening was it before she was actually released? Do you recall that?
It was a couple of hours.
Okay.
That she was at our office. In the third paragraph here, it goes on to explain the different time periods, and that's pretty clear without getting into too many details.
One more.
Sure.
Thank you. So obviously there was something that happened. You needed all hands on deck to take care of a different situation. In the future, so I'm assuming, and that's where you get yourself into trouble, but the communication specialists, if there's an emergency or somebody seems to be in distress, what's the protocol for them if all officers are out?
Yeah, so in the event that the person in the holding area or in the cell block is in distress, the communication specialist will immediately notify the supervisor, and the supervisor has to break somebody away to respond back to the office to deal with that. At no time during this incident did that happen. But that is the protocol, is if the communication specialist observes someone in distress and all the officers are out on the road, then someone has to come back regardless. If someone's down in the patrol room doing paperwork, they would go downstairs, and I can tell you personally, my office is just above the cell block. I go down to the cell block on a regular basis to check on people, and especially when they're banging and being loud, because I don't know what they need. Sometimes people are angry, and we've had situations, and this is not funny, it's not meant to be a joke, we've had people upset because they didn't like what they wanted for breakfast and they threw the food all over the wall. It really does depend. But to answer your question, it's very simple. Someone would have to break away and come back to the office.
Thank you for answering those.
You're very welcome.
Lindsay, did you have?
Hi, yes. So just to clarify, it looks like in the third paragraph that you were mentioning, that it outlines that the person that was being held, they were not left alone for the whole time they were in temporary holding.
That's correct.
Okay. An officer had been in and out. Do you know approximately how long they were left without someone checking on them?
It was about an hour.
About an hour. That's what I thought.
Right.
Okay. And just another question, is it part of policy or protocol when you take someone and you're placing them either in temporary holding or in a holding cell to ask them if they have any medical conditions?
Generally, we'll ask people if they have any issues or concerns.
Okay.
As they're placed there. But again, they're monitored. When we place someone in that temporary holding, it generally means that it's going to be quick. If we arrest multiple people, for example, at the same time, we'll put them in there and then we just take them out one at a time, because you can only fingerprint and photograph one person at a time, and things like that. So, but generally people will just come out and tell you, hey, for example, I've had back surgery, or I have a bad knee, or whatever. And we're gentle with people anyway, but we do take those things into consideration.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jean?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. If the other call hadn't come in and things had kind of gone the way they normally would, how long is it typical for someone to detained in that area?
I mean, it's tough to come up with a number. I mean, sometimes it's just 15 or 20 minutes. It could be upwards of an hour. It just depends. I mean, in this particular case, having to wait for the judge to call back, there are days that we, honestly, and it's not a dig at the judges, so don't take it the wrong way, there are times that they may not call back for 4 or 5 hours. And if that was the case, then we would move the person from, the temporary holding room into a cell block where there would be facilities and things like that. It's just, it's just that the temporary holding room is, quite honestly, it's just a lot more comfortable than being in a cell block because the door is wide open and you can communicate with people out that are there. When you put someone into the cell block, I mean, the door closes, bang, ooh, and they have a little window to look out. At least in temporary holding, you can communicate with the officers or the staff that are there. I mean, I understand that the cell block is not made for comfort, but we try to take care of people when they're there. So, it could be a very short period of time if the judge or the clerk calls right back with the release conditions, or they might be there just to simply receive a citation, and that's where the minutes come into play. They're just there so we can get things set up. We can start entering all the information into the machine that collects fingerprints and photographs, and then we get them, we bring them, we do everything, which takes about 10 or 15 minutes. We have them signed, we escort them up the stairs, and they have the choice to go out the front door or the back door. It's just a system. I mean, but it can be a short period of time, but again, there are times that we have to hold people for a longer period of time while we wait for guidance from the court.
Well, it sounds like the camera with audio is a really good idea and good solution.
Yeah, I think that is a good solution, and it was definitely not cost prohibitive. We were able to find money in the IT budget to make that happen, and then you'll hear about. I can't give up my budget now because I don't want to get in trouble with Mr. Hurd, but we are asking to revamp the camera system at the police department, in fiscal year 2026. Cameras are old. They work, but we want to come up with new technology and things that are, far more enhanced than what we currently have. So
thank you.
Stay tuned.
All right, so any comments from the public?
Hi, Jackie Matz, Bennington. Is this on? Yes?
Yeah.
There you go.
Jackie Matz, Bennington, Vermont. Chief, you mentioned that the protocol is that if somebody needs assistance while they're in your custody, officers are in the field, that an officer would return. This is obviously a sensitive situation with this case. I think the written summary that you provided was really helpful in sort of getting a full picture of what happened. The timeline was still a little tricky to follow, but it really gave a good understanding. So I really appreciate that. I wonder, are there standards locally, statewide, some national organization that lay out sort of how long it should take to respond if someone in your custody needs medical assistance, or if they injure themselves, or something like that happens? This case, they were uncomfortable, right? Certainly it was not a great situation, but I can imagine situations where somebody might need assistance much more quickly in a much more serious situation, and if all the officers are gone, that seems like that could lead to worse outcomes than the one we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I'm not aware of any national standards or any coalitions that have been formed to look at something like this, but I will tell you that in our regular cell block holding area, those cameras do have audio. okay? This was the one camera that did not, so we made that change, right? So when we have somebody that, wants medical assistance from Bennington Rescue or what have you, the communication specialist can hear that, and it can immediately dispatch the rescue squad to come to our facility. We have the ability to let the rescue squad directly into our facility, and they can access the cell blocks or the holding room without an officer being there in the event it got to that point. Most times, there's an officer that's doing paperwork in the building. There's someone that can respond immediately downstairs and be of assistance. This was, without getting into too many details, this was a day that there was not a lot of, there was no administrative staff working. We're not there 7 days a week. So I think, I understand what you're saying. I can look into it, but I'm not aware of any national standards about how long someone can sit. Again, it really depends on how quickly we can get, the court to respond to us and provide us the information that we need to be able to release that person.
Sure. In a lot of these sort of situations, it's often the case that several things have sort of gone, I don't want to say wrong, but differently than expected, that leads to these kinds of outcomes. But I'd really encourage you to think about if you do have a person in custody, that someone should remain at the police station that can reach them quickly in the event that's needed, even if there's another call somewhere else. It just seems inappropriate for all officers to leave the building at that point.
Well, Jackie, I don't think it's inappropriate. It's what we do. A fireman doesn't stay in the firehouse while everyone else goes off to a fire call.
They also don't have somebody in custody at the firehouse.
Yeah, and I understand that. But at the same time, to leave an officer at the building while someone, quite honestly, may be looking to take their own life, requires everyone to respond. So, we do, we have spoken to our supervisors about this, and the other piece of it is, if we have someone in temporary holding and we know that this is going to be a long duration call, the supervisors have been told to make sure that their people move the person to a cell block where they have those facilities and they're free to move about in that cell block. That's something, but it's not like we've left them unattended in the building, because we have communication staff watching the cameras and can see see what's going on. So the building is not left, no one is in our building, in our custody, that's not being observed on a camera. That just doesn't happen. Someone is in the building.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I should have probably asked if there's anyone that needs to recuse themselves from this. I don't think so. But, are there any other comments on this before we say if we agree or make recommendations? So are there any recommendations or suggestions for the chief based on the report?
I'd just like to move to accept the report.
I second.
Okay. All those in favor of accepting the report, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Abstained? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And before you, I know that was really all that was on the agenda, but since you mentioned budget, that's, if I recall correctly, you work on that in December. It goes before it gets presented in early January. Is that the timeline?
The budget was turned over to the town manager and the finance director last Friday for the police department, and that is currently being reviewed by the town manager and the finance director. I will receive the budget book back from the town manager, hopefully before the holiday break next week, and I can look at any suggestions that they have made, and then I can prepare myself for my budget presentation to the members of the Select Board, which I believe is going to be on January 4th of 2025 right here in this room, and I know that only because I signed off on the permissions to use this room for budget hearings on January 4th of 2025 and the 11th. But I anticipate if we do what we normally do, the police department and fire department budgets will be presented on the 4th. At least that's what I'm hoping.
So last week, not to get too far off topic, but last week there was situation table training.
Yes.
And it was very well attended. And I know that there was a lot of talk about mental health. So I'm just wondering in the budget, and I know I don't want you to tell me to stop, but Vermont State Police have one full-time equivalent that I would call from UCS contracted for mental health crisis specialist. And I know we had a part-time 24-hour week that we originally got from the Department of Public Safety from Vermont State Police through Commissioner Morris sending everything down. And I know that it got absorbed into the fiscal 25 budget for us.
Correct.
For Bennington. So given all of the recent increases with mental health and some things that have come up and everything, is that still in the budget, and is by chance is it getting increased to a full-time? Or is it just, I know it's wishful thinking, you can tell me to stop, but I'm just.
I think, listen, transparency is key to what we're trying to do here. I mean, I've read through the listening session comments that were provided. Listen, I understand, mental health is a big thing. And I'm proud to say, not to digress, but I'm proud to say that I think that we're the only department in this county, police department or law enforcement agency in this county, that has made sure that all of our people have mental health first aid training. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I think that, mental health, whether it's, due to substance abuse or whatever, it's an important piece. So let me answer your question. So currently, the state police out of the Shaftesbury Barracks have 2 clinicians from United Counseling Service. We did get our program started with funding that Commissioner Morrison was able to find for us, and for part-time, it was 24 hours a week. Last year, we asked for a full-time clinician to be assigned to the Bennington Police Department, and with the budget and things, we were afforded $41,000 to make that happen for fiscal year 2024. The first invoice just came from United Counseling Service for July, August, and September, which I just signed off on. I will tell you that for fiscal year 2025, I did include money to make this a full-time position with the Town of Bennington Police Department. There's no guarantees in any of that. I mean, Stuart and Melissa have to take a serious look at the overall impact that this has on the police department budget. And there are other things that I will disclose on June 4th. I'm sorry, January 4th. But yes, the short answer is I did request the money to have a full-time clinician, 40 hours a week, at the Bennington Police Department. I mean, there are people that look at this and say, well, that's great, but you're only covering 40 hours a week. Yes, well, if that's what we can do. But you also have to remember that also gives us access to the UCS crisis response team, which is after hours. And so, at the same time, we have to look at the big picture, and if we can get the board to accept that and put that out to the taxpayers, I hope that they would support that. But we'll take this one step at a time. I do think it's a viable program. We love the fact that we have a clinician in our building 40 hours a week, not just to deal with mental health issues on the outside, but it also allows the officers an opportunity to speak to the clinician. And the one that we currently have is amazing. And so we're really hoping to build on this. But again, it depends on the budget impact. So, but yes, the short version is, as I did put in for the amount that is necessary to have a full-time person there 40 hours a week.
That's good news. So,
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Because you brought it up, if you don't mind, just quickly, because I do want to hear from Margay, and I don't want to take up too much more time. I just want to share with you that the situation table training was well attended, as you said. There were some differences of opinion at one point in the room, but I think that's why we have these trainings, and that's why we bring people together. I mean, this room was full. There was over 50 people here, and law enforcement had, from the Bennington Police Department, we had 4 representatives. Manchester had 1. The state police had 1, and that was what we had for law enforcement. And I think you all know that law enforcement is being tasked with taking on more and more responsibilities as far as people with addiction and mental health and things like that. And I'm certainly not opposed to that. We've made a lot of changes in law enforcement in the last 5 years. And we've taken some huge strides, not steps, strides in making sure that people in this community are taken care of. And so I thought it was great that the state paid for that, just in case there are people who are wondering, that the state came up with the funding for that. It was not anything that the town of Bennington had to pay for. And I think that's important because some people feel like the town of Bennington taxpayers are asked to do an awful lot for a problem that is statewide. And so I just wanted to share that. Again, the state took care of that. I thought it was an excellent 2 days of training. And now we did a lot of role playing in this course. And I'm hoping that in the next couple of weeks we can get our own situation table up and running here in Bennington. I have a couple of employees that want to take the lead and step up, and one of them wants to chair that. So, we'll see how that goes. It's going to be Margay was here. It's going to be, there's a lot to it, and we're definitely going to need some guidance. We're already doing things like the situation table as far as outreach and helping people, but bringing everybody together on a weekly basis. It's a huge time commitment, but if it's necessary to help us move forward in our community, then we're committed to that. So I just wanted to share that. Okay, you're welcome. Any other questions? Well.
Thank you. Good luck. Next on our agenda, under community policing discussion, we have Margay Diamond, who is the Executive Director of Bennington's Turning Point. So Margay, thank you very, very much for being with us tonight.
Sure, thanks for having me. So I'm Margay Diamond. I am the Executive Director for Turning Point Recovery Center in Bennington. We are a peer recovery center. And what that, this is right in my eye. What that means is that the majority of my staff have lived experience. That includes myself. I am a person in recovery. Most of the staff are. We have a couple of people who are allies, meaning they're family members, so they've had someone go through it, and they're important people too. We know that the people who are impacted by alcohol and other substance use disorder is much broader than the person themselves, right? It ripples through families and it ripples through our community. I think it's important to take a step back and talk about substance use disorder, which is how we term this issue. We don't call people addicts. We call them person with a substance use disorder, right? Just like if you have arthritis, you wouldn't want to be called and identified by your handicap, right, or your disease. They're still people. Substance use disorder includes alcohol and drugs. I think the majority of this town thinks that we're all about drugs. And do you know that over 60%, it's consistently 2/3 of what we see is alcohol? That shocks most people. The drain on the system from alcohol misuse is multiple times worse than the drain on the system from drug use. Why? Drug use tends to have pretty immediate consequences, doesn't it? We all track and see the overdose deaths. They are immediate, they're shocking, they're upsetting. But what you don't hear about is the 30-year-old that has been sent home from the ER to die, or the 31-year-old who's been given literally 3 months to live. We have 2 women in their 30s right now who are dying from alcoholism. And it's long and slow and awful. And it's a big drain on the system. They are in the ER a lot. Your pancreas fails, your kidneys fails, you have heart trouble. There's a lot of issues with people who drink too much. Now, we're not running around telling people, like, close all the bars and close the breweries. People can drink responsibly and enjoy it. People can use cannabis responsibly now that it's legal and enjoy it. But some of us can't. I think there are varying opinions on this. There's definitely a genetic component to our susceptibility. But I would say that the much bigger issue is trauma. It could be trauma with a big T or trauma with a little t. Everybody that I see, and I know it to be true, is running from something. Alcohol or drugs have become a maladaptive coping technique to a bigger issue, and it's usually a mental health issue. People are self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. Let me give you an example. If I have ADHD, what is the doctor going to prescribe for me? Adderall? You've heard of that? What is that? It's a stimulant. So it's kind of a weird thing. If you have hyperactivity and you put a stimulant with it, like cancels it out. It's kind of like when you have inflammation and they give you steroids, right? So we have a very high rate of stimulant use, much higher than anything else right now. Crack cocaine is the #1 go-to right now in terms of the drug issue. I'm separating these two pieces, right? Alcohol versus drugs. Everything is contaminated at this point. The drug dealers are not good people. They're just putting stuff in there that sells, and the cheaper the better. So what people are asking for is not what they're getting. So we have a lot of people out here who think they're using heroin, which, by the way, there are drug sample testing that goes on all around the state, and we get reports all the time. And we know that last year there was 3% of the drug supply had heroin in it. 3%. It is 0 so far this year. So people are going around asking for something, thinking that's what they're getting. That's not what they're getting. Everything has fentanyl in it, absolutely everything, and a lot of house-made kind of analogs of chemicals. So there are spin-offs of fentanyl and spin-offs of these other drugs. Xylazine is one in particular that you may have heard of. We've been trying to sound the alarm on this for a while. It is here. What is it? Xylazine is actually a veterinary medication. It started out in Puerto Rico because they do a lot of raising of racing horses there. It has found its way into the drug supply. We think, why the heck would you put that in there? Well, people are reporting that it gives legs to the fentanyl, which has a shorter high, but then they're knocked out unresponsive for 8 to 9 hours because it's a tranquilizer. And because it's a tranquilizer, it's hard to say that word, it does not respond to Narcan. Narcan is our weapon in the opioid epidemic. It only works on opioids, right? So if someone was passed out from alcohol, Narcan's not going to help you. If they are passed out from xylazine, it's not going to bring them back. We say always try the Narcan because things are layered on top of each other. We have multiple drugs in what you think you have. So we hope that there's more fentanyl than xylazine and that you're able to knock that off the receptors with the Narcan. I didn't bring any Narcan with me tonight, but I hope everyone knows that they can get it for free from us, from UCS, from Savita. Police, I'm sure, have access to it in harm reduction bags. We also put up a 24/7 dispensing machine in front of GBICS. That was grant funding that we got through UVM Cora, which is the Center of Rural Addiction. And why the machine? They're popping up all over the place. 33 states already have them. This is the second one to go into Vermont. There will be many more popping up because I can see the applications and funding coming through. What's good about the machine is nobody has to ask. The number one reason why no one asks for help when they are struggling with drugs and alcohol is the stigma. They know how you're going to respond. They anticipate what's going to happen if they show up at the ER. And if that one incident happens where they feel judged and shamed, they're not going to come back. There is so much inherent shame with this disease. And I call it a disease because you never really get rid of it. Once you fall into a pattern of addiction and you have to get yourself out and find recovery, you're going to live differently now. This isn't just about stopping the drugs and alcohol. This is about living differently. Because if you remember what I said, the drive for continued use and the drive that ends up looking like self-destruction is an attempt to escape from some very real pain. Some of it is physical, a lot of it is mental. A lot of it is mental. We have people who are really, really miserable and don't know how to find their way out. We have intergenerational trauma and substance use, so that we have a third generation who does not understand any other way to cope. When I'm upset, when I'm sad, when I'm scared, when I'm mad, I reach for the thing. I watch everybody do it. That's how we relax. That's how we forget our troubles. Now, the beautiful thing that we know is that drugs and alcohol shut down the front part of your brain. That's why you can forget your troubles, right? And you're not spinning with that inner dialogue, which is really what upsets a lot of people. They're very critical of themselves. So, you're doing the thing over and over to escape feeling a way that you can't figure out any other way to get out of. So we really want people not only to find medical help, but we want them to learn new coping techniques, right? So we have a very close relationship with the hospital. We have coaches, not quite embedded, but we're on call 24/7, kind of like UCS's crisis team. So when someone presents at the emergency room with a drug or alcohol issue, we get paged and we go. And we sit with the person and we listen. If it's alcohol, we try to encourage them to be admitted for detox. The hospital will do some alcohol detox inpatient. For other people who are addicted to opioids or stimulants, again, people are assuming all the stimulants are cross-pollinated with opioids at this point. So almost everyone is offered Suboxone. Now, these are medications that can help the body calm down. So you've probably heard people talk about withdrawal. So when you take these things consistently, and it includes alcohol, and you do it regularly for a period of time, when you stop doing that thing, your body's going to have a reaction, quite a strong reaction. People say it's like the flu. I would say that's lightweight. You feel like you're going to die. Now, what drugs and alcohol have done is shut down the front of your brain, stopped producing the happy, good, feel-good chemicals, which we call endorphins, right? Those are things that help contribute to your feeling okay. You hit your elbow, you come back to normal, right? You have been artificially pumping these chemicals into your body through drugs or alcohol. And so your body's like, whoa, you just gave me a lot of that stuff. I don't need to make it anymore. You keep pumping it in so much that we're going to shut down internal production. So when you stop doing the thing, not only does your body have a very serious reaction, but your brain is not online yet. It's not online at all. And you're not producing those natural balanced chemicals. It takes a while. Now, our system of care here is set up in an interesting way in that most of our folks are on Medicaid or Medicare by the time they get to us. We have 2 treatment facilities in the state where we can send them, Bradford and Virgins. So they're going to leave here. And the amount of money that it's a lump sum payment for treatment, and it equals 14 days. 14 days. If I have been drinking myself almost to death for 14 years, how do I feel after 14 days? Like maybe the fog has started to lift? I'm not okay yet. It's going to take months for the body to start producing those chemicals normally again. It's going to take more months for you to learn how to live differently. You aren't going to be able to have those same people in your life all the time. Probably not. And that's a real challenge for us right now. We are sending people to treatment. They are released in 14 days. They come back down here to the exact same place, the exact same people, the exact same pattern as they left. What's different? So we are offering folks, when we meet with them and connect with them, please use us to ride shotgun with you. We're not driving. This is your journey, but we are right here with you. And we've been through it, so we know. We know it's a chronic relapsing disease. We know that you need to be prepared for that. The holidays are a very difficult time for people in recovery. There's a lot of drinking going on, right? So even if most of us are on an abstinence path, but we respect all pathways to recovery, this field has evolved tremendously in the last 10 years. It used to be AA or the highway, and that's not the case at all. I have tremendous respect for AA, but there are other pathways as well. I have watched people recover by becoming triathletes. I have watched people recover through yoga and meditation. There are many ways to do this, but it requires different thinking, right? I'm now not taking this easy thing I can pick up and checking out. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to sit with my feelings, and I'm going to learn how to work through this. And that takes practice, especially if you've grown up in a household where you never saw that demonstrated. So we have at Turning Point peer coaches who can walk alongside folks and help them create a plan. Right now we're doing a lot of safety planning with people. So when you go to Thanksgiving with your family and everyone is drinking and you walk in and someone slaps a drink in your hand, this happens to us a lot. They just put a drink in your hand because everybody drinks, right? And we say, no, I'm not drinking. And the first thing we hear is, why not? It's really uncomfortable in the beginning. So we try to help people understand what's coming, how we can live sober in a world that's not, and where recreational use of many things is a given at this point, and we don't begrudge people that. We just know what we need to do for ourselves. Partnering has been a huge piece of what we've tried to do, particularly over the last couple of years. Nobody solves this problem alone, right? We're all in this together. We cross over into so many different areas. So we have developed a really lovely working relationship with Gina Kondo over at Probation and Parole, really trying to look at where these points are that trip people up, right? So let's say you've been in jail or prison for a while and now you've been released. We know from the data that within 3 months this person's going to relapse. There's a high probability and or overdose. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that we're connected to people when they come out. And now that we have some support from the state to roll out peer recovery coaching within the jails and prisons, we're hoping to tighten that connection point. So there are coaches that have been inside Marble Valley since 2019. The Department of Corrections has recognized that work and given funding to all of the centers now to work inside their own respective jails and prisons so that you can start doing peer coaching, start having groups, start helping people to understand this new path and some of the tools that they're going to need when they get out. So the first thing they do isn't go run to their dealer when they get released, or go back to that group of friends and get peer pressured into, oh yeah, this is just what we do, right? So we really want to support people at these critical junctures. That's, of course, when people overdose and they're in the hospital. We have a unique pilot program running right now with Bennington Rescue, because as much as we have coaches up at the hospital, and we know we'll see people if they're up there, 40 to 60% of the people that rescue sees for substance use refuse transport. Why do you think that is? Probably because they already been there before and they didn't feel like they got treated so hot. Or if they were Narcaned, and we would be happy to do Narcan training for anyone. We've done the entire school system this year. That included Woodford, Shaftesbury, Pownell, the supervisory union, everybody. So always willing to do these trainings. Narcan is literally like a nose spray. It's not a controlled substance. A 3-year-old could drink it and nothing would happen. You really can't go wrong. The only thing it does is lift that opioid off the receptor in the brain. But when it does that, it throws people into acute withdrawal. Does that make sense? So you had these opioids sitting on your receptor, we just blew them off. Now you are sick, and you were depressed, and you were feeling panicked. So a lot of times when we see someone who has just woken up from an overdose, they don't really remember what happened. They just see a whole bunch of people standing over them, and they feel awful. And what they want to do is get up and go run to get the thing that they know is going to make them feel better. You've heard the term dope sick. It's real, and this is the withdrawal process. It can last for a week, for longer. It is way worse than the flu, and largely because of this mental health component. You're suicidally depressed. It takes a lot to nurture people through those first early dark days of coming back online and joining the rest of us and living. And we always say to people, we're just waiting for you. We're all here. I think that compassion first, letting people have some autonomy in this process. You know, when people are picked up for drugs or alcohol, we got a lot of people telling them what to do. You got to do this. You got to be here. You got this. We don't tell people what to do. We're probably the only people in their circle who don't. Right? Because again, we're saying you're in charge of your life. This is your journey. We're going to help you figure out what works and what doesn't work. I can give you ideas. I can share some things that I've seen work. But in no way do we ever assume that the way we personally recovered is right for that person. It's unique. So just like, you know, I could say, Lindsay, I know you like chocolate, but you're going to like vanilla now. You're just gonna. You're going to resist that because it's not what you want. So again, people need to really want recovery. I think a lot of people have heard about, you know, letting someone reach rock bottom before they get better. Rock bottom is so subjective. That is different for everyone. I've seen someone who said, you know, waking up with a hangover and having a newborn was enough to whack me into shape. I couldn't believe, you know, how can I take care of my baby like this? And that was enough that one time. That was a rock bottom for someone. Another person's rock bottom is my entire family doesn't speak to me. I've been in jail. I don't have anything now. I can't even get a job. I've got all these charges. That's a good rock bottom. How do you dig yourself out of that? People are very ashamed and very aware of the wreck that they have caused. And so it's important for us to remember we don't need to add to that pile of shame. What we need to do is give people hope and model by example that recovery is possible. We can have a beautiful life. Our Soberfest event that we had in September was incredible, and I think we're kind of onto something here because it is about the positivity and the hope. This is a depressing topic. It's touched so many people in really tragic ways, but there is hope, and there are a lot more people in recovery than you think in this town. And I think Soberfest was a really fun way to see some of those people pop out of the woodwork and go, oh, this is kind of fun. So we really encourage people, and what am I trying to say here? We encourage people to have hope. We encourage people along the process, because this is a journey. Nobody's going to pop out of a 14-day treatment stay fixed. And yet, I think that's what a lot of family members think, right? Mm-hmm. So they went to treatment. They should be better. It's a logical assumption. And yet, that's not the way this process goes. You're in for a good 18-month ride before that person is really back to themselves. And it takes patience. And it takes, again, that knowing that they'll get there. Might be on their own time frame. Might not be how you wanted to do it, but they'll get there. So we believe that. We offer a large variety of groups and workshops. We also have an outdoor adventure group that goes out every Saturday morning. They go hiking and they do different trails. They went snowshoeing last winter. So we really, again, trying to provide people different pathways. Our wellness offering, hopefully, is a complement to what a lot of people have found, again, with those prescriptions that Savita and UCS can prescribe. Those are great for keeping your body calm, but again, your mind is racing and telling you all sorts of things. So we really want to give people tools. We do a lot of work with folks around breath work, meditation, yoga, trauma-informed yoga. All of these can be great things for people to deal with stress and anxiety, right? And do it in a natural, healthy way. So that was a long spiel. Let me see if you have questions.
So thank you. And I know, first of all, thank you for keeping the conversation going and for what you and your team do. And I know I've heard that, like, if there is an OD called, you are part of the process, your team is after. It may not be right at that call, because sometimes it's better to wait until someone's calmed down, or maybe you could talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, Paul knows, and Cam, we had a program for a while that was, we had coaches on call, and if dispatch got a call that said, we have an overdose, we were paged and supposed to go to the scene, get there within 15 minutes. It's not a perfect system, because how people call in the issue is the start of that whole process. So not every call says, oh, they overdosed, right? Oh, he's passed out, or we need an ambulance. You don't know. So the dispatcher would miss things because they weren't told that it was an OD, right? Sometimes we got to the overdose situation, and if someone had passed or the situation was really complicated, it didn't feel appropriate for us. It felt like crisis should be there, right? No one's doing recovery coaching in a hot moment of crisis. They're just not. Mm-hmm. So what we have now is a referral process, and we also get referrals every morning from rescue. So we are physically going out to those referrals. We are banging on doors. And in the situation table, I heard the ex-police officers who are giving our training advocate for that, which was good to hear, because it's a little bold, mm-hmm. But the idea is that if you're not coming into interaction with the care system, right, if you're going to say, I refuse transport, and rescue saying, we've seen this person 3 times, or this person called because chest pains, but we saw track marks. So rescue is actually able to pick up even secondary issues, right, not the reason for the initial call, but I see a problem here, right? We made a few of our staff volunteer rescue squad employees, which means they are super duper trained on HIPAA and all sorts of things, protocols. And those people specifically are going and saying, hey, we heard something happen here the other night. We're just here to follow up and see if we can help. That's it. We're not jamming anyone. We're not citing the incident. We're just saying, we're here to help. So can we offer any resources? Would you like to talk? We could connect you to someone. Now, most of the time, people don't answer the door, shocker, but we have a letter that essentially says the same thing, and we leave that in an unmarked white envelope in their mailbox or door. And we do that so we're not outing anybody, right? So We have had situations where we go to the door and the person we're asking for, who is the individual who one would assume needs help, is living with a partner or a parent who had no idea that the incident occurred. So those are tricky situations, for sure. We have been invited into some people's homes and had some amazing conversations around a kitchen table with a mom and son. So, if somebody doesn't want to talk, we'll leave them alone. But I think there's real value to showing up and to just expressing care. We're not trying to make you do anything, or we just want to help. I think it goes a long way. The street outreach that Turning Point is the fiscal agent for includes multiple agencies. I think that's really our secret sauce to outreach. Every community has outreach going. We're not unique in that. But what's different about the way we assembled our outreach is it's not just one agency that goes out. So we go out 3 times a week with a representative from United Counseling Service and with a representative from AIDS Project. We had been going out with a BCCH Homeless Coalition rep. They lost that person. They'll be back. A different person will be hired and on soon. So that meant that we had harm reduction services, mental health counseling, substance use support, and even the ability to take housing referrals right on the spot. So it's been effective in that way, in being able to come out as a team and just get people to get familiar with our faces and know we're not scary, that they can absolutely ask for help, and that we're there to connect.
Thank you. Is any questions from the board for Margay? Lindsay?
Hi, Margay. How are you? I love that you brought up the fact that we only have 2 treatment facilities in the state, and they're for 14 days apiece. We know that it can take anywhere from 18 to 24 months for the brain to reset after stopping substance use. What could we do as just residents to kind of amplify the fact that we need more treatment and more treatment options and longer-term treatment? Whether it's, legislation, what could the everyday person do to kind of advocate for that?
Good question. So there's a couple of things. I'd say the everyday person, I'd encourage people to have Narcan. It's just like, have it, just in case. What if someone comes over? We always think about the person that's sleeping behind G-Bix under the bridge. But let me tell you, there are plenty of older adults squirreled away in their house, drinking by themselves on top of their prescription medications. There are people who forget they took their prescribed medications and take them again. So overdose can happen over a wide variety of circumstances. And I think it's just smart to carry Narcan. So that's number one. Second of all is when you see people, just say hello. Just say hello. I think we could do a lot to reduce stigma by just being kind. Legislatively, we're not going to get very far with expanding treatment, in my opinion. I don't think that's going to happen. But what I do think we can push for, and we are pushing for, is increased step-down facilities. So you may know that we have had 0 recovery housing in this county. As a state, we are very behind. New Hampshire, for example, has over 100 recovery homes. Vermont has 13. People need somewhere to go after 14 days of treatment. The argument being made at this point is most of the treatment facilities don't want to argue for longer stays there. What they want to do is be able to transition someone to what they call a 3.1 facility, which is not so heavily medical, but still supervised and structured. So you would have a period of time where you could work on sort of getting some stability, and then hopefully when you come back to Bennington, you're going to go to a recovery house, because we now have a women and children's recovery house at Squire's House that is run by V4, the Vermont Foundation of Recovery. And we have a men's house in progress on Gage Street It's been about 5 years in the works, but we hope that it will be open in March of 2025. So it's not a ton of beds, but it's 8 in each house. People can stay there as long as they want, up to a year and a half. When you get into a sober home, you will have been expected to have gone through some parts of those process already. So you've been to treatment, you've detoxed, been to treatment, had a few weeks under your belt, because we are going to ask you to get a job. Go look for a job, right? You're going to start putting your life back together, but with oversight and peer support and some boundaries, right? There'll be curfew. There'll be things that they need, chores they need to do in the house. So it's a way to help people learn how to relive. Most people have been in their addictions, alcohol or drugs, for years. It's not a 6-month bender we're working on. This is like a 6-year problem or a 16-year problem. So it does take time. I really appreciate that you brought that up, Lindsay. We just don't give enough credit. You know, when you look at a stroke victim, everybody gets it. They're like, yeah, his brain's still healing. And people get their functionality back. It's incredible how the brain can repair itself. But we don't give people in recovery that grace.
When somebody with a substance use disorder gets incarcerated at Marble Valley, do they get provided detox? Do they get any kind of rehab? Or do they just go cold turkey when they get there?
Most of the time, they would be offered Suboxone. Some jails and prisons might offer Vivitrol, which is for alcohol. Suboxone's pretty widely available in jails and prisons now. And because, again, most people, their drugs are so cross-contaminated, there's fentanyl in everything. So you know you're at least addressing some portion of it by giving them Suboxone. For the alcohol people, they're going to sweat it out. If they present a real medical emergency, they'll be taken and taken care of.
So if we could somehow get legislation to have recovery in prisons, wouldn't that be one of the answers?
So what we're doing right now is, as I said, the peer recovery centers have been inside Marble Valley since 2019. So we are spreading those programs around. We don't do treatment, though. So the peer centers are not, we're not a treatment facility. We don't do detox. That's the hospital and the treatment facilities. We're there for the peer support and navigation. A lot of times people are just confused about what to do, right? So when they finally come up for a little bit of air and say, I need to get help, where? How? Right? And so we provide a lot of support in that respect of teasing out what people's issues are. I mean, sometimes they have real medical issues that need to be dealt with first, right? Mm-hmm. So we're right there to try to support and help navigate. We make a lot of phone calls to treatment centers. We spend a lot of time on the phone with people doing an intake, and then figuring out their transportation of how they're going to get up there. Green Mountain Transportation has been amazing. Really, really great at working with us, but it's not a perfect system. Sometimes there's no drivers.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
There are definitely some challenges navigating through that system, but we're getting better. And I'm really encouraged about the recovery housing. I'm super encouraged about our partnerships. You know, Paul was talking about the situation table and how many agencies were there. And it was tremendous. I don't think there's been better collaboration. It's just the fluid conversations that are going back and forth and the ability to connect the dots to say, oh, I need this agency with me, right? Many times we're making referrals to Vermont Chronic Care Initiative, right? So they can case manage someone with complex needs. So I really think that piece of it is getting stronger and stronger, and with that we'll do better by our community.
Thank you.
I know this is off topic, but just I believe that the Vermont Department of Corrections has been putting some more into mental health the last couple of years. I don't know his exact title, but Morning Fox has been part of it. He was, I want to say, the assistant commissioner for the Department of Mental Health a few years back. And I know he's been involved with the Department of Corrections, and he's making some pretty good changes for mental health and you know, some counseling when someone is incarcerated with addiction. So not as fast as we'd like with, you know, recovery and everything, but I think you are starting to see some changes and emphasis within the systems. So, Jean, did you have a
Yeah, I have a few questions. I'm going to give them to you all at once.
Got it.
And the first thing I'd like to just comment on is, first of all, I always learn so much when you speak. So thank you for that. And I'm wondering if the collaboration increase is occurring because as more and more people are suffering from substance use disorder, we all know someone. And when it becomes personal, you want to fix it. You got more skin in the game. So I'm just wondering if the level of collaboration is increasing as more and more people are suffering. So my first question is, I get very upset when people say things that for me are very hurtful and people seem to feel, some people do, feel that people that have substance use disorder are somehow disposable. And it really, really bothers me when people have no empathy or seem to have no empathy. Do you have some advice on what to say to people when they express those sorts of opinions? That's my first question. I'm curious and concerned about the coaches. They invest so much of themselves to help people, and it's not always going to work, and it doesn't always have a positive outcome or the outcome that they had hoped for. How do they deal with that and be able to continue doing their work? And do people that have made strides in their own recovery feel a sense of pride at some point, or do they?
Oh, yeah.
Great, okay.
It's the
Those are my
hardest
three
thing we've ever
questions. Yeah. So the
There's
shame.
nothing harder than this.
The shame does
Oh, we live with it.
go away, but
Everybody lives with it.
yeah.
But you have to put it in its own place. You know, it's as if you're grieving someone in a weird way, right? You have to put that over here and move on. But it's there. Rolling back, what can you say to someone who has zero compassion for or thinks, I lurk on Facebook because I like to see what people are saying, so I'm aware of the don't give any Narcan, just give them one Narcan, incarcerate them immediately. We have a lot of different theories running around from people who have not taken the time to educate themselves. That's what makes me upset. You have an opinion, I'd like it to be grounded in reality. And the reality is this is very difficult. This is not a choice. That makes me angry. So that is the consistent argument that I hear, which is they're choosing it. They made that choice. We're not choosing this. We are not. Nobody wants to become an addict. Nobody wants to be sitting there full of shame and fear and their life's a wreck. Nobody wanted that. It happens because it's a disease and it takes off on its own. And once you shut down, which is what you were trying to do short term, right? This front part of your brain, which is the part of your brain that stops you. So when your instinct, your primal brain goes, woo, let's jump off the edge. This part says, oh, no you don't, because like that might look fun, but you're gonna get hurt. So you have this part of your brain that stops you, right, from an instinct or an impulse. When you shut that down, that's not driving anymore. And so you see all kinds of wacky behavior because it's instinct. People are reacting to fear and hate and very strong emotions. That's it. There's no shades of gray here. People are making desperate choices to avoid being sick. So once they realize that if I don't have the thing, or I don't have beer, or whatever it is that they're using, and their body starts to go into withdrawal, that is so scary. It feels like death. So I heard somebody give a really interesting example that said, if you were stranded in the desert and you were near the point of death, like you hadn't had anything to eat or drink in over a week, and you could feel your body dying, and someone showed up with a bottle of water and said, you can have this water, but you're going to lose all your family and friends. You would take the water and try to negotiate later. You would do it every time. Because self-preservation is the thing that drives us. That is what's happening with drugs and alcohol. It has literally hijacked the brain to make it feel like it's a survival need. And that is what people don't understand.
That's a great example and a quick way to educate people on what's going on. Yeah. And what about the coaches and their own struggles?
Yeah. So we require 2 years, a minimum of 2 years sobriety before coming in, and we do that on purpose. I was willing initially to kind of mush that a little for some people, but it's real. So just like what Lindsay referred to, you need to give yourself time to heal. We are very careful about people's time. The wellness coaches I referred to are also for staff. So staff can get a massage, staff can work on breath work, staff can go talk. We have an EAP program, and the EAP counselor is a recovery coach herself. So she understands this work. And we talk about self-care a lot, because if our tank isn't full, there's no way we can turn around and help somebody else. So thank you for that. Thank you for recognizing that.
I have one more really quick thing. When you were talking about activities and fun things to do with people in recovery, I'm just going to throw it out there. I say it all the time. The Clark Art Institute is free, January, February, and March. There are probably people in recovery who have never been to the Clark.
Yes.
And it would be could be a life-changing experience.
That's a great suggestion.
Yep.
Thank you. Well, thank you for allowing me.
Wait, Margay, one more thing. Can I just ask a question? And this is something that you might not be able to answer, but I think it's an important part of the conversation when we're talking about addiction and recovery in this community. If magically tomorrow every drug dealer in Bennington disappeared, would that solve the problem?
Nope.
Thank you.
Because what did I say is the impetus for keeping using? You're running from something.
Yeah.
Right? What people say unanimously, we say, what is good about your alcohol use or your drug use? I like to start with that, because people are doing it for some reason, right? Let's figure out what's good about it. And they always say the same things: escape and relief.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think that there has been a lot more collaboration the last couple of years, especially at the intersection of mental health and criminal justice, which I think is another reason why we need that one FTE. So anyway. Next on the agenda is CPARB's Future Planning Board Goals and Activities. This has been on the agenda a couple of times. We were going to vote on it last month, and we had a member that had to leave and didn't have a quorum. So we've discussed this a couple of times. Can I get a motion to accept the proposed changes that we will submit to the Select Board to consider?
I motion.
Oh, go ahead.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Okay. All right. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Okay. Abstained? Okay. So be it. We will,
Just have one comment.
Sure.
It was raised at a couple of our meetings whether or not all members of CPARB needed to be Vermont residents. And because that is in here. And so we had an opportunity to talk to Stu Hurd and Dan Monks about this, and there's nothing that requires anywhere that they be Vermont residents. And so we're able to take that out without an issue.
okay.
And then, so I will, then I will forward the necessary documents to the Select Board.
Yep.
So that we can be on.
And request to be
your,
on the
first
agenda.
meeting in December. All right, wonderful. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you. All right, so next on the agenda are the listening sessions. And Kate, I'd like to turn it over to you if you don't mind summarizing.
No,
Is that okay?
That's fine. So we had 2 listening sessions this fall, one at GBIX and another one at, it's called The Lounge, with CRJ, the kids that go over to hang out at CRJ. And one of the things I want to point out is that their comments are very similar to the ones that we had, to our listening session comments in the spring, to the 6 we had. And so there's in some ways, it's a real mixed bag. Some people are just comment on how polite, respectful, helpful the police are, and others, for whatever reason, have had bad experiences, but we never probe for when those occurred. So this might be 5 years ago, when our police department was under a very different cultural sort of norm that's very, very strict law enforcement culture is different than a community policing, crime prevention, collaborative, inclusive culture. And so that's what comes up. What I really appreciated was the comments from the kids. They were great, because they suggested things like the officers could go have a table during sports games and have a raffle, have bracelets. They'd be willing to wear bracelets with BPD on it, which I thought was like, well, that's cool. I hadn't anticipated that one. The one thing that really struck me, and I suppose this is just an issue of family dynamics, is that the children, the kids of adolescents, because this was in high school, most of these kids were all in high school, they said that the kids of some officers threaten them if they don't give them what they want. So there's a little bit of bullying that can happen, which is not unusual for that age group. And so, but that, like I said, that's a family dynamic, and so everybody likes to use their power however they've got it, The one thing that came up, and it's come up in every listening session, is really this need for implicit bias training. And I think that's kind of a constant in society as a whole, that everybody has implicit bias. It's part of that unconscious part of our brain, if you will. But the issue with implicit bias training is that we don't act on it. And so that's another one of those things that I think just needs constant reinforcement for all of us, really, because we all come with our own set of baggage. I mean, in some ways, hearing Margate talk about what happens with the recovery coaches is just a reminder of some of that bias that we have as we walk by people downtown or whatever. But as an aside, Kelly and I had an opportunity to go to a Beans and Bagels meeting just the other day with BBC. And I think we mentioned that the kids in particular want to be, in some ways, agents for change, that they're willing to be involved in assisting and working with the community for good. So we mentioned it there because it's, again, implicit bias. People see kids gathering on the street, sometimes outside the grotto, just waiting for it to open or whatever on a weekend, and assume that they're up to no good, if you will, when in fact they're just waiting to go in, right? But it was very helpful in a way for us to know that these listening sessions have value as people get to know more about the changes that are going on in BPD, but also that CPARB is a liaison and a resource for them as well. So, any questions or comments on that? No? All right.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I don't think some of the people, at least at Gibbix, have seen what the police have done, and they're basing some of their feelings on what they've seen in the past.
Yeah. My impression, too, is that not everybody understands that officers need to wear their full complement of uniform when they're on duty. That they can't go around in polo shirts or whatever, because you never know when you're going to be called to a serious incident, and they need to be prepared for that. They can't go back to the office and get their stuff. They have to have it on them because they have to respond very quickly. And while the incident is serious, there's also this effort in de-escalation that occurs. But you never know when a situation is going to go sideways. And officers need to be prepared for all kinds of situations. So the fact that they have this full complement of stuff that probably weighs 20 pounds, is important for their safety, but also the safety of others. So, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kate. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on the listening sessions? And if not, we're going to talk about next steps and where we want to, do we want to try to get out into any other listening sessions over the holidays? Do we want to wait? I know Scott Richmond and I spoke about possibly doing one with the fire department, but he's still working on that. I know at times we go to Community Cafe and just sometimes out and about, but do we want to try to set something up for December, or do we want to try to wait till after the holidays to come back?
I'd be in favor of waiting till after the holidays.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. So then next on our agenda is a possible 2025 Public Safety Forum discussion. And I just want to give a little bit of background on this. We did speak about this briefly last month, but we didn't have a quorum. And basically, on the 16th of October, the Select Board had a listening session. And during that listening session, there was a resident of Bennington who had raised several concerns about drug use, gang activity, and after that, Kate and I met with her to talk about that. And she had some really good, valid points about some of the recent activity, what some people would call as, quote, catch and release, repeat offenses, gang activities, and vigilantism that's going around around town and in the area. And we thought it might be a good opportunity to try to get together some key stakeholders to have a public safety forum discussion for the greater Bennington community. And when we had our meeting last month, Jean Connor had said that was pretty much, she had thought was in our purview. So Kate and I went just to try to find out a little bit more, because we did, the members that were here did decide that it was something we'd like to investigate and go forward with. So Kate and I met with Stu Hurd and Dan Monks to just make sure that we had the buy-in from the town and the support, because if not, it wouldn't be probably going very far. So they thought it was a good idea and kind of gave the approval, I can't find my paper, to go ahead and, and what we came up with to discuss and to see how everybody else felt was to get a small group together, possibly on a Wednesday evening, maybe in February, because that's after the budget, it's before town meeting day, it's kind of a quieter time. Wednesday nights seem to be a slower meeting night, and what we thought that the purpose of the forum would be, the overall purpose would be to focus on safe and legal crime prevention, and that the forum would seek to bring together key stakeholders. And what we were thinking about was a representative from the Bennington Police Department, the Vermont State Police, the state's attorney, UCS, the town manager, and possibly a member of the judiciary. But I did find out afterwards that might be a conflict. The judiciary may not be able to participate if it's not something that they've done. I don't know if that's true. I haven't validated that, but I was told that the other day. And then really it's to educate and inform the community on current best practice efforts, opportunities, and challenges, and to listen to the community's concerns. So that's what we were thinking about. We were hoping that members of CPARB would agree to facilitate so that the forum and the public would be able to ask some questions. And we were thinking about some possible locations other than what I would call our home here at the firehouse. We talked about the Bennington Theater as a possibility. We talked about the Mount Anthony Auditorium. There is a small charge for the theater. The auditorium would be no charge, and that would be available on February 26th from 6 to 8 p.m. And that was, did I miss anything? Thanks. Here it is. Anyway, so thoughts from the other board members?
I just think this would be a really great opportunity to kind of amplify what's already being done and what's being done that's positive, and kind of give those stakeholders an opportunity to talk about that to the community, which I think could really be a great thing. When we're talking about it being a listening session with feedback from, I'm assuming, the audience members, how are we thinking what is the flow of the night? I think that we should at least put some thought into that.
Yeah, and I think we'll have to, and I think it's probably going to be more of a forum than a listening session where there is some back and forth, but I think that we will have to develop that over the next couple of months to go.
Yeah.
So, Kate, did you want to add anything?
Our initial thought was to have some maybe primary topics or questions that each of those sort of sectors would, of law enforcement, criminal justice, however we want to term that, deals with. Because a lot of the issues that residents seem to come up with is, why are they released so quickly? And they don't understand that that's the law, and that the officers, the police department, they have no control over that. They are there to enforce the law, to follow the law. And so if a judge decides that they're released right away, then that's what happens. And so to have the members of those different areas talk about that. And, if people want the law changed, well, then they need to do something else. They can't blame the department, the police department, because this is what the law says, right? And this is the limits of their, in a sense, jurisdiction, their power there. So, but to have the different members of this forum talk about some of that. The other thing that has been really disconcerting and troubling is the whole realm of vigilantism. And the fact that you've got residents who think that they are somehow helping when in fact they're creating potential risks, not just for themselves, but for the general public, for the officers, for the person who they're pursuing, if you will. I mean, I've heard stories from people of somebody who was a roofer deciding that they were somehow connected to public safety. They have no authority. They come off the roof, they jump in their truck, and they're in pursuit. And I'm thinking, this is asking for trouble in lots of different ways. And like I said, it's a risk to themselves, but it's a risk to the public, it's a risk to the police department. Yeah, just lots of risks. So we need to have some sense of boundaries.
And that desire to jump off the roof, and that comes from a great place.
Sure.
And it comes from a place where community members, they want to be able to do something, and you have to give people information.
Exactly.
And I think that this is just a great avenue to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd be curious to hear what you would have to say about this safety.
Oh, the safety forum?
The safety forum. Do you have any suggestions or comments?
Thoughts? This is so you've got the detail of what we're thinking, and but we haven't talked to you about it yet.
As the police chief, I would support a public safety forum in Bennington. I think it would be helpful to bring community members in. We seem to be doing a lot of listening sessions, but I think at the same time, it's great to listen, but at the same time, I think people leave the listening sessions without gaining any knowledge that they came looking for, because there's no one to answer their questions.
Right.
And I think, making a public safety forum and creating a board with the police chief and/or lieutenant, someone from the state's attorney's office. I think that someone from the Center for Restorative Justice is important as well. And I don't want to go too far, but United Counseling Service, I think, is important. We have other organizations, and not because Lindsay's here, but with PAVE, that I think it's important that we put the word out, the programs that are available to people, and they know who they can call in the event they're concerned about their health or their safety. So I think it's more about best practices, programs that are available, and things like that. So me, 100% support this. I would like to see, I read the notes here. I would suggest the Mount Anthony Union High School auditorium. I think that it's a larger facility. The chairs are comfy, and we have the opportunity. When I was younger, I was on the stage a lot, but I think that now we have the opportunity to be on the stage, and we can leave all the lights on, and we can just have a conversation. We can set up microphones, and we can allow people to come up and pose their questions. No specifics. We're not talking about individual cases. We're not talking about who should be in jail or not should be in jail, but letting people know what programs are available and how to keep themselves safe, and I think that's important. So I support it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I've found most frustrating about the listening sessions is you really can't speak up and say what's going on.
I think too, Scott, that and this is Cam and I had a conversation. I think you have listening sessions. That's great, but sometimes people listen to what other people have to say, and it's not always 100% accurate. There's misinformation, so then they leave the listening session, they go and they talk about what they heard at the listening session, and it may not be accurate. And again, it's like reading Facebook. Half of that malarkey isn't true, right? That people post on social media. So I think by having a public safety forum and allowing public safety officials in our area to be able to respond and answer questions, and provide guidance is key to the success of what we are all trying to do, which is keep our community safe.
Sorry. I agree 100% with what you're saying. And I think when the advertising or the publicity is rolling out, I think however you decide to phrase it, it should be put out that this is going to be mostly educational and informative. It's not the forum to talk about the things that you mentioned and anything else. So people are aware that this is serving a very different purpose.
One of the things that we discovered through the listening sessions, having had 8 of them, was that people didn't know what the department was currently doing, how it had changed, nor did they have any sense of what CPARB's role was. So it became an opportunity to educate and also to listen. And we thought that at this juncture, now that we've had all of these listening sessions, that it would be important to have these major players on a stage and to let them have an opportunity to explain what it is they do and what they don't do. And because I think sometimes people think they have a lot more power and control than what they actually have. And then have that as an opportunity, as you say, for primary as an educational tool. And in doing so, creating the opportunity for more collaborative, more understanding It's like with Margay's presentation today, the details of all the things that she does, but doesn't do, become important.
Right.
Because that's not widely known.
I also think, too, that, with that, people like myself and Margay and, we can talk and talk and talk and talk. We'd have to limit that because we want to make sure that everybody gets, 7 to 8 minutes to talk about what their agency does and what we don't do, and some of the changes that have been made. That's great information because there are people, unfortunately, that come out and they're not educated on what the police department does. People don't know what PAVE does. People don't know what UCS currently does for our community. It's not just everybody go home at 4:30 in the afternoon. They need to know about crisis. They need to know that there's an alcohol program right here in Bennington in our own hospital. There's just so much that people don't know. And if you don't get the banner, right? That's how we educate people here is media outlets, and unless it's something heinous or it's something that's really cool for a community, we don't see it on the Albany News. We don't have our own news station here, and other than Cat TV, don't take offense, but I'm saying, daily reports and things like that. So, we use social media, Facebook. Sometimes we get criticized for that, but other times social media is our best friend because it helps us solve things, right? So there's just a lot to this. So getting up and being able to speak a little bit to community members that are interested, and I agree with Jean. We need to promote this and get people to attend. And Kelly, as the chair of CPARB, you need to stand up and say, this is what the Community Policing Advisory Review Board does, and this is what we don't do. Listen, folks, we've been doing this for almost 3 years. We've had 3 different facilitators or what have you from the select board. We've had board changes over this time, and I think now we finally have a solid board, people that are very interested in what we're doing, and now we just have to get the community on board. But the community can't be on board if they don't understand all of the things that the police do and what all of our community partners do. So again, I'll stop now. I just want to say 100% support this, and if I'm not here, Cam will do it, and because I said so. And no, I'm just kidding. But I think that there's a lot of education that still needs to happen within this community so people understand what we do. People don't even know what community policing is. And I think it's important that we explain that to them. But unfortunately in Bennington, community policing, as you know, comes on the back burner because we have so many things in front of us that we need to accomplish. So anyway, with that being said, let's do it.
Okay, thank you.
I think I wouldn't want to take up a lot of the forum to talk about this, but we all hear it. Everybody thinks Bennington's going to hell in a handbasket. And somehow getting the message across that things are difficult everywhere. It's not just Bennington. Not that that's good news. It's not good news, but we're no different than every other community that's struggling across the nation, possibly across the world. And yeah, we can just sit here and whine and complain, or we can dig in and try to come up with some solutions, which is what we're doing.
I think it's very easy for people to forget just how good Bennington is.
Exactly.
From somebody who travels a lot for work, we have so much locally. We have our own hospital. We have our own police department. We have our own fire department. We have restaurants and some shopping that you can get to within 5 or 10 minutes, even when there's a lot of traffic. And we've got some really, really great people.
And most of us do say hello to everyone we pass on the sidewalk.
Most people do, and I think that sometimes it's just easy to forget just how good Bennington is.
So we should remind people of that.
Yeah, so we should, yeah. So, all those in favor of proceeding with the Public Safety Forum, please say aye. 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 Opposed?
Aye. Mine was
Okay,
no.
so carried. And can I get a couple of volunteers, or actually voluntold, to work on some questions to come up with, and maybe the location and all of that? So I'm looking for somebody for locations, possibly the auditorium. Would Scott? Would you take the lead on location for next time to come back and report back? Can you work on?
So just speak about security.
Yeah, just work with me, yeah. Could maybe you two work together? Is that okay on that? And we'll get some, start working on the, what I would call like the housekeeping logistical stuff.
Should we try and resume the auditorium for that date?
Yep, and we'll talk after about, the Mount Anthony Auditorium for the 26th, which is the week after school vacation. Yep, okay. And then maybe questions, Lindsay and Kate? Sure.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right. Any other questions or comments on that before we go on to the annual report? Okay, all right. And we can get that information back for the next meeting, right, to discuss. Perfect, awesome. And then maybe we can see if we can get Scott and Jeff to work on communications with Jonah and getting the word out. Yep. Voluntold. I don't know if that's legal or not, but we'll see. Anyway, next is on the agenda is the CPARB annual report, and just an FYI, we have a draft on that, and we will be submitting it to the chief and Stu within the next week or so, and that will be out for December. So, any questions or comments on that, concerns?
And that will be included in
the annual
larger
report.
annual report?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All right, so that was more of an FYI. Upcoming agenda items. So for next month, obviously, we'll be doing the Public Safety Forum follow-up on that. Is there anything else that anyone would like on or to consider? Is that?
And we'll probably,
Just more-
have just a follow-up on the select board decisions on the resolution.
Yeah.
Because,
We're hoping to get on the December 9th meeting, right?
yes,
Isn't that-
yeah, the first meeting in December.
December.
I've already talked to Jeannie Jenkins about what might the select board need for that meeting from us. So,
In case the 9th doesn't work, you do realize we're not having, the next meeting is going to be the very next week.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, it's the 9th or the 16th.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we were just hoping not to be in any kind of conflict, if you will, quote unquote, with the charter committee's a submission of their report and their recommendations.
You wouldn't want to be on the same night.
Yeah, we'd like to be before them. Just given us just some of what has been in the paper about their decisions on CPARB, I'll call them decisions at this point.
Yeah, and I
And
don't,
recommendations.
I don't go to the agenda setting meeting, so I can't tell you what's coming.
No, that's just my understanding of what they've decided about CPARB, and we'd like to be able to present what the changes that we have
Prior to that.
Prior to that.
One other thing, do we want CAT TV to be at the Public Safety Forum?
Probably. On that planning document, you've got, we have tech availability on there. So that would be potentially CAT, if they're available, that on a Wednesday night in February. So that would have to be, but that's also part of just all of that setup. But until we secure the place, it's hard to, and the date, we don't want to put them in a sort of a holding position where they have to hold a couple of days.
So if we get this 26, we then coordinate
And
with
then we can contact CAT TV and see if they're available. However that process works, whether that's something that the town does or we do directly, I'm not sure how that works.
And I should see if the high school can have the audio
Yeah,
equipment.
Yeah.
We'll just have to work with them and see what they
Yeah,
can
if
do,
they
and
have, like,
if there's something, we may have to ask Jonah for some assistance. So, but if you can just find out what's required, and
Yeah.
and then we can, that would be great.
Do you have a specific person to reach out to?
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yep. Okay. All right, any other upcoming agenda item? If not, we have announcements. And just basically next week is Thanksgiving, so happy holidays to everyone, and thank you for watching our meetings and for everything. So if there isn't anything else, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Oh, second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting will be Thursday, December 19th at 6 p.m. right here in the Firehouse located at 130 River Street in Bennington in the third floor multi-purpose room. Thank you very much and have a great night.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Happy
everybody.
Thanksgiving.